Dr. Trufan, and in this video I'm going to demonstrate how we can dry our filtered solid from the filter paper and how we can evaporate the water from our filtrate. For this experiment, we're going to need a hot plate as our heat source, and we want to set it at a medium-high temperature. At the end, we're going to weigh our materials. So for that, we'll need a scale and 2 weighing boats. But to get them from either the filter paper or the beaker inside our weighing boats, we're going to need 2 spatulas. You can use just one, but make sure that you clean and dry them in between uses. And then for our chemicals, we're going to need our filtrate, and we're going to need our solid on the filter paper. If our filter paper was the one that we used for Buchner filtration, it will be as small as this and fit on the watch glass. If it's larger, because you completed gravimetric filtration, you can still place it on the watch glass, but be gentle with your heating because the larger filter paper is going to burn faster. So we place our filtrate on the hot plate, and then we place our watch glass next to it. We'll need to keep an eye on the watch glass, and if we're not using heat-resistant gloves, it is important that we also pick up a pair of tongs so that we don't burn ourselves. And now we just wait. We wait for the water to evaporate and for the paper to dry. It has been a while, and my water is mostly evaporated. And when it gets this concentrated, the salt may start puckering, and it may want to jump out at you. And if at that point you're getting uncomfortable, there are a couple solutions for you. One, you can always turn down the heat a little bit and gradually lower and lower until it's no longer doing that behavior that you find disturbing. The other thing that you could do is take another watch glass and place it on top a little bit so that your vapor can still escape, but your salt does not. And so I'm a little brave today, and I'm going to let it continue the puckering until the salt starts jumping. And at that point, I will tone it down further. On the other side, the filter paper is drying out. And if the temperature is too high, then we're going to observe the paper burning and turning dark. So at that point, we can slide it to the side, and we can use our tongs to remove them from the hot plate. The way to tell that the filter paper is dry is that it becomes a lot less pliable and a lot more rigid. And at that point, the stiffness of the paper is an indication that it's dry. My watch glass is very hot, so I'm going to remove it and place it on the bench top where it's not wet until it cools down cold enough to touch. As I am waiting for my water to evaporate from the saltwater solution, I can move ahead and weigh my calcium carbonate that I collected on the filter paper. So first, I'm going to turn on my scale, place a weighing boat on top of it, tare it, and then take my watch glass, remove the filter paper from the top, take a spatula, and transfer all the solid that I can, gently scraping the paper. We can't scrape too hard because at that point we will have paper residue inside our calcium carbonate. Once we removed all the calcium carbonate from our filter paper, we can put it in the trash because calcium carbonate is the same thing as eggshells. So it can be discarded as waste. If there is residue on the watch glass, we will transfer this into the weighing boat as well. Once we transferred everything we could, we record the mass of our calcium carbonate, which is 1.49 grams. And with this, we are done with the solid that was collected on the filter paper. My salt is puckering, so I will turn the temperature way down and move my beaker to the side of the hot plate so that it's not so hot. Before moving on to measuring the amount of salt that I collected from my filtrate, I need to make sure that there is no water residue on the sides of the beaker. And I can still see that there are droplets of water because as the hot water vapor comes up, it touches the cooler side of the beaker and it condenses there. So there are a couple ways in which we can help this process along. We can take a little bit of a paper towel. We can wipe the sides gently, or we can just wait until the beaker is completely dry. The better option is to wait for the water to completely evaporate, because as we can see from the residue on the side of the beaker where it's completely dry already, we still have very small salt particles that are depositing. My beaker is completely dry now, so at this point I can, if it's not too hot, remove it with my fingers. If it's too hot, I will use my tongues, and I can set my hot plate to the side. Next, I'm going to weigh the mass of the salt that was collected in the process. The first thing we do is turn on the scale and get it to 0.00. Then I am going to place my weighing boat on top of the scale, tare it, and when it shows 0.00, I will transfer all the salt from my beaker into the weighing boat. If this process of scraping out the salt takes too long, then we just need to redo the tearing of the weighing boat. I think I did a pretty good job here. I will transfer the salt into the weighing boat. And I will record the mass of the salt that was collected, which is 0.76 grams. There is another way that we can measure the mass of the salt that we collected. We could weigh the beaker with the salt as we remove it from the hot plate and it cools down, record that mass, and then wash the salt from the beaker, clean it, dry it, weigh it again, and the difference between those two masses will be the mass of the salt that was in it. And with this, we dried and weighed all the products that were created in our precipitation reaction experiment.